Anybody else? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the changes.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Joey, thank you.
I'll second.
Second from Andy, thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. Public comments on agenda items, 5 minutes. Anybody from the public want to comment? I think we have an opportunity at the end of the meeting as well. Yes. All right, thanks for coming. Item 4, approval of minutes from the August 11 meeting. Regular meeting. Kelly had one change for me on item 9D. It says city services agreement and it should say DDA bond work session. So that is submitted as a change. Any other questions or additions? I would entertain a motion for approval of the minutes.
So,
Thanks, Bruce.
Second.
Thank you, Jody. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item between 4 and 5, I did receive a resignation letter from James Boudry. I'll read it, it's short. Chair Mosier and fellow board members, I'm resigning from my position as a board member for the DDA. This decision did not come without a great deal of thought and reflection. To put it simply, I need more time for my family, my business, and my personal endeavors. I trust that a better fit for my now open seat will make themselves available once open to the public. Regards, James Boudry. And I did send that to staff and Kelly. So if you see James, thank him for his service. Item 5, Department of Public Works update. Jeff.
well, I didn't know what specifically you wanted. I got a very late email from Christina yesterday, but what I passed around was 2 pages that you, I believe, have already received, but it's the normal maintenance things. The first page is just the normal maintenance things that we've done up through really July. I didn't update it for this month. The second page are the items that were identified when we did our spring walkthrough, specifically of the Riverwalk and down River Street. And items that are in red are completed, items in blue are still things that need to be done. And then specifically the last page were the notes that Mickey and Brandon took when we did our walkthrough. I think it's been a couple of weeks now. So there may have been other items, but these are the items that the 2 of those guys wrote down. Again, the items in red are all things that we've completed already. The items in blue are either scheduled or just haven't been completed yet. Specifically items, the sidewalks that have differential settlement, so we've got some trip hazards. We have contacted our contractor that does the sidewalk saw cutting throughout the city, and we will add the Riverwalk section to their workload this fall, so that'll be taken care of. The Switchback, I received a draft report from the engineers yesterday. There's basically 2 issues that are happening there, but all of them really come down to there's erosion at the base of the hill that the Switchback and the Riverwalk is built over. So I believe it's primarily a high water issue that caused soil to slide into the river, if you will. So we've got one area where there's a sidewalk that's severely undermined, and the other section is the wall and the Riverwalk are actually sliding towards the river. So on a short term, we're going to open up sections of that sidewalk because most of that's inaccessible. Even if when they've crawled up underneath, they also used a very tiny high definition camera and tried to stick it in every nook and cranny, and there's a lot of pictures, but we're going to open up a section of that to further evaluate, and then we'll stabilize it for now, and then we'll have to come up with the dollars and a capital improvement plan to do the permanent repairs on that. One item that I would request is, obviously now we're past Labor Day, it's September, summer went really fast. The dining platforms that are downtown, my understanding is that the individual business owners are responsible for removing those. And then I've offered to store them in our cold storage, but I'd like to know how that's gonna happen and what the deadline for that. My biggest concern is just snow removal. So sometimes that happens early November. Usually it happens mid-November, and certainly by the beginning of December we have snow. So if we could just think about that a little bit.
There's 3 locations.
Did we originally talk about a date of November 1st?
I don't remember.
I just wanted to put it on the
Yeah,
radar,
yeah.
you know. The other thing is, after your meeting on last Wednesday, we did put out the 2 yield signs. Personally, they're not my favorites, but they are effective. And I think moving them to the east side of the intersection has certainly been way better than the west side. It takes the turning conflict out of play. And I've already had people mentioning to me, where did those come from? I thought they were gone. I said, well, I found them at the fire department for some odd reason. But every single person that's brought it up to me has said, it makes me feel like the street gets really narrow and I slow down to protect my car, which I think is part of the intent of that. So at this point, I don't think it would be a huge investment to purchase 4 or 5 more. I think they're less than $200 a piece. And if the DDA is willing to purchase those, I'd be willing to put them out and take them in the wintertime. And, you know, and then if we keep having problems with them being knocked around or whatever, then we can look further at the permanent ones. But I just can't get prices on the fixed ones right now.
I noticed an immediate difference.
I honestly, I'm just not a fan, but I'm a fan of their way they're working and what they do for the downtown. So I'm coming around.
How long will those be?
Is it state law in Michigan to yield to pedestrians?
I don't know, we could just make it up.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, is it state law?
I believe it is.
Okay.
Where it's been used before, I've seen, you know, in combination with the sign, there is bright yellow marking for pedestrian. I'd like to set it off somehow in addition to the signs. I think they do exactly what they're supposed to do.
Jeff, do you remember how many we were originally talking about?
We had talked about Division, Greenbush, Poplar, Oak. And then I think we had talked about putting one on Washington by the brewery, or 1 or 2.
I think 5 was the number as well.
So one on Washington would be 5. If you added one at Pine, that'd be 6.
Do we want to take action on this, and
That's right, John.
is that a motion?
Yes.
Will you make that motion?
Yeah, I move to support Jeff's request for 6 additional signs.
Well, I think we have 2 that are working fine.
Yeah.
I would order maybe 4 more of the same, and I think your expenditure would be well under $1,000 then.
So there's a motion?
Yes.
Bruce?
I'll second.
Second from Jody. Any further discussion?
Is there a more aesthetically pleasing way to do that?
Not, the answer is not if you conform to the Uniform Traffic Control, Michigan Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Those are safety and street signs. They don't have them Victorian, they don't have them, I mean, they're specifically so you notice them and they stand out, just like a stop sign or
They're
a
just
yield
not
sign.
good.
So, yeah, I agree. The streetscape design, you know, those bump outs serve exactly the same function. You know, if you don't care about the pedestrians, oh goodness, we suddenly point out that the lanes are narrow, slow down. You know, it has the same effect. So I think longer term, yeah, it would be much more attractive. We won't, if we've got those bump outs, we won't need, to put up signs.
Yeah, the bump outs are a traffic calming technique is, I think, what you're referring to.
That's a much better way of putting it.
That's the official term
Yeah.
is traffic calming. The crosswalks themselves, being a different material, different color, are a traffic calming technique. Even just when you go over and you feel those bumps. The bump outs do the same thing. They also guard a pedestrian and bring them out to the edge of the traffic, protected before they make the crossing. So it's a visual thing. So a safety thing, that they're wonderful. From a maintenance perspective, they're our worst nightmare. But
So there's a motion and a second on the floor. The only comment that I have is, if they're not exactly the same, I wouldn't be opposed, but maybe if there's some that are framed in plastic or something, so if somebody does accidentally nick one, it's not just metal, but just leave that up to you.
Well, and going back to Kelly's question, the ones that we've been researching for this whole year, basically, what I wanted to do was put mounts recessed in the pavement, and then you just have a single column that is a breakaway. The signs don't change, but the pedestal that they're on would, and it doesn't have the big black blob at the bottom of it. But I just can't get pricing on those. I can't find a vendor that'll give me pricing. So we found these. This DDA in the city had used those for quite a few years in the past. Some are in the river, some are damaged, but we found 2 survivors.
Okay. Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried, thank you.
Was there anything else you wanted me to address or any questions?
Do you have any, did you want to say anything about the lights?
Oh, yeah. So I mentioned also Wednesday that we have 3 different globes down on the north side of the River Street by the marina. They're very evident during the daytime. They should be very evident at nighttime. The city's electrician of record specifically put those in for 2 different reasons. One, so you can just see the difference between them, and if there's one that really looks appropriate versus the other 2, that's important to know. But also, the way that they change out is a different labor cost and a different material cost. So the contractor wanted to know, it's gonna take me $100 to put this in, but only $50 to put this in, and 200 on that one. So if the DDA selected one that we preferred, all I'm doing is getting a quote. So if we picked one and said, this one looks wonderful, or maybe you say all 3 of them, I can't tell the difference, it doesn't matter to me, then the electrician will price those out. We can extrapolate it into how many globes you have downtown, and then you have a budget number.
But we're not talking about the color of what's inside of the globe, right? We're just talking about the globe itself.
Well, they're LEDs, so trying to think of what they're called. Well, whatever illuminating mechanism they have, each one is different, and each company does a different style.
I noticed this morning that when I was down there, it was dark, and there was one post that had an orange one and one had a white one.
It'd be the degrees Kelvin is what the term is.
Yeah, okay.
So the whiter it is, the higher the degrees typically.
But are we deciding on the globe or the light?
They're one and the same.
Okay,
They're a unit,
yeah.
they're a replacement unit.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And you're not, this is just to get a price.
Sure.
This is all my effort to get a price to you to say, these things are $1,000 a piece and you have 100 of them. And
Do you have a preference on one of them?
I haven't looked at them at night.
Okay.
And they won't be there forever. They have to return them back to the company, so
Gotcha.
I think there's a couple weeks left.
I have no taste.
Poor guy.
It's a preference. The only thing that I would say is, I would just like to make sure that that's what we're doing, getting a pricing. We can make a decision now, but when we get the streetscape design, the sort of full streetscape design, I don't know if these fit or don't fit.
Right.
And the other thing to keep in mind, because we had samples of them down here at one point too, is they're a much whiter light, even even the lower Kelvins typically with the LEDs. And one looks great, but when you have all of them lit up, it might be a little bit much, so you just have to be cognizant of that as well.
Yeah, there's LED lights on River Street, east of 31. When we installed and underground all the power there, we put in LEDs back then. So it's always been talked about at the various DDA boards through the years. It'd be nice to convert those over, it'd be nice to convert those over. When they put them up in front of TJ's and Glick's, there was a stark difference in how much more vibrant the storefronts looked in their displays and so forth, so. But my effort is just to try to get you pricing.
Why not just, why wouldn't we just get pricing on all of them, all three of them?
We can.
I mean, is that a big deal? Then we're just looking at big numbers.
Yeah, I just asked the electrician,
Okay.
give me a number.
Yeah.
But the technologies are evolving very fast, so a number today may not be good next year, there may be something better or whatever, but, so he said when he reached out to the different vendors, they said, let us send you samples, put them in, people have a preference on how they look, you also need to know how much labor it takes to switch them out.
Okay.
So it's kind of the method they chose.
So within parameters, you can choose the hue, right? I mean, LEDs come with different hues.
I believe so.
I can explain, 3500 is basically a warm light, kind of the orangish that you have downtown. If you get up into like the 4500 degrees Kelvin, that's the medium light, maybe similar to here. If you get up to 6000, that's the bright, probably similar to what's at the other end of River Street, bright light.
Yeah.
And basically, when you pick up fixtures, you need to decide what sort of color you want.
Yeah, I think that's one of the decisions in the streetscape design, and I don't think we're ready to make that now. So I think that getting all three estimates is fine.
And I think for the efforts, it'd be nice if everybody could take a look, and it's getting darker sooner and staying dark longer, so.
And also, I believe there's a consumer's rebate to switch over to
Yes.
LED, so that can help with costs as well.
Okay.
You definitely lose the ambiance the more brighter you go.
Agreed.
But it is really dark on River Street in the winter, coming to this building from the other chamber building. It's dark when I walk to my car.
You can
You
just
know,
put
so-
gas lamps too. Anything you want. Thank you, Jeff.
He said those will be up for another couple of weeks.
Yeah, because
Okay.
there was just a finite time where they had to then return them, but I think a couple weeks is fine.
Okay,
Can I just ask real
Please.
quick? Jeff, so the colors down by the marina, there's two different colors of the globe, and then is it different down on the east side of 31, or is it,
The east side was installed about 10 years ago.
so it's much brighter than what's down by the marina, or?
That I don't know.
Okay,
I think it's
similar,
lighter.
lighter down there,
Yes.
and then there's two different colors over here by the marina?
Yeah.
Okay,
10
thank you.
10 years ago, there was an LED conversion.
Yeah.
We bought it. Now there's options.
Okay.
Christina sent out an email that described, I believe, where exactly these are.
Yeah, you can see them if you look right where Bruce lives. If you look from the fountain going this way, there's three of them, and you can see one's really Victorian. It has a point, just like the current ones. The other ones have a little bit flatter top. They look a little bit more modern to me. So I assume that the Victorian one would look a little bit.
They're about mid-block between.
But I do
Pine
have
Spruce
pictures.
on
I
the
did
north
take
side.
them. So I can get pictures out as well. I haven't looked at them at night, so maybe I can get Kelly to go with me. Because I bet the LED, like the orange lighting, would probably be brighter than what we currently have, just moving to LED. So that lumens might be something. I wouldn't want it to be a stage downtown.
Okay, moving on to financials. Looking for approval for the July 2021 financials. Any questions? Any comments? Christina?
And it's not a really way, Kyle, everything runs fine as we're starting out the year.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ed.
Second.
Thank you, Jody. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. And then secondly, approval of expenses for $26,494.94. These are all budgeted items, right?
Yes, the majority of them are hops and props.
Okay.
And we have to pay the hops and props, all of the beverage vendors before they provide the beverages. So that is what the majority, there's ice, porta potties, that kind of thing for the event.
Okay.
So for clarification, it's not 16,803.34, it's 26,494.94.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Thanks, Jim.
And the reason why this imperial beverage is not on your current unpaid bill sheet that we just did yesterday is I got it at $4.50 yesterday, and I thought while we were meeting anyways, I'd just give you hard copies to review. And I'm hoping that's everything.
Motion to approve the.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there a second?
Second.
Annie, you got it. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried, thank you. DDA Director Report, Christina.
Okay. This month we have been working on the annual audit, so there was quite a lengthy list of items. So we're still working with the auditors. Everything has to be in by December 31st. But the accountants and I are both working forward on that. Haven't run into too many snags at this point. We're administratively supporting Hops and Props and Slayville both as they are both moving forward. So Hops and Props will be September 18th. If you are in town and want to volunteer, I guess the last 2 pouring shifts are still available. So they'd love to have more volunteers, or if you just want to come and enjoy the event.
And how does one volunteer?
There is a sign-up link online I found, but I can send that out to everybody if you would like it.
And you said September 18th?
September 18th, from 1 to 6. I worked on the Consumer's Energy Grant, so basically, and that's a little bit later, but it was we asked for $230,000. We made it to the second round with 20 other grant applicants. And so the DDA would put in $20,000, so it would bring our total up to $250,000, and that is for river-facing facade grants. So to try and tie in business with the river side to capture the beauty and encourage that to be more vibrant and lively. So say a restaurant wanted to put a deck out, they still have to provide the matching funds, but we could provide up to 7 grants at $30,000. If we had 5, we could provide a little bit more. They just have to have the matching funds to that.
Is that specific for commercial use, or is it also eligible for residential use?
We did not apply for residential.
So it would be just for commercial?
Currently, that's what we put in it, but it doesn't mean, we didn't specifically specify, but we wanted to tie business on that side of the Riverwalk to get that vibrancy and get more people to use it and hopefully have some outdoor seating and or dining or music or something. Yeah.
So that
That was kind of how it was written.
how
but
many
yes.
applicants are left?
There was 20 of us that all applied for that second round.
But we made it to the second round.
Yes, and then in October, we should know if
Gotcha.
if there's another step or what the process would be. And then within that, we also applied for $40,000 for community public art, which we could use to support murals, or we could use if we had sculptures that were donated that we wanted to put somewhere they could do that, we could do the footings and the things to get them installed. So even though you have the sculpture, how are you going to get it in? Then we could use those funds for that.
Okay.
So that took a little bit of work. That was about a 7-page document with a couple of hoops to jump through, but it was, I think it's exciting, and it kind of goes along with some of the bond stuff that we're working on. So hopefully we do well and score well. And I can send more information if you guys would like that. And then that's how you've got the new directory that I kind of put out, was because that was a piece of the Consumer's Energy Grant. So in your paperwork, it's just a contact list of all the DDA members and their appointment dates and things like that. And then I'm working on a new board member kind of checklist procedure. Kelly is my first onboarding, so I'm trying to get that procedure, what paperwork would be helpful, and hopefully she'll give me feedback on what we've started, and then we'll continue moving forward on that. Merchants report, we had one merchant meeting. The summer has been very steady for them, very good business. Sidewalk sales and Pier Run really didn't affect the business. It stayed pretty much the same as it has been all summer. That kind of surprised me when that was reported out. There was only 5 or 6 merchants on the last call, being this time of year. Not everybody jumps on. I expect more participation in the winter. But, you know, with so many people in town for both of those things, I thought we'd see a little bit of an uptick, or they would be a little busier, but steady's good. We sent a survey out for Sleigh Bell for the soup cook-off to see who would be comfortable in participating. Who wasn't sure with COVID or any of that, what merchants may or may not participate. So waiting for those survey results to see if that event will take place within Sleigh Bell. And then the next thing on the radar is Downtown Day. Just doing some Facebooks and social media. That's September 25th. The governor declared Downtown Day as of September 25th last year, and that's continuing. So we'll do some marketing push for Downtown Manistee on that. And I also put us in on the Michigan Downtown Association. They had where you can enter your town, send some pictures, do a write-up, and I did submit for that. I haven't seen it yet, but trying to get us as much buzz around Manistee as I can. On the economic development front.
Can I just ask a
Yeah,
question? I don't know if this goes under, I don't think, no, go ahead. I'll ask after your economic development, sorry.
Okay. Mark put together just a quick list. The Gateway project meetings are continuing with the developers at MDOT. The agreement for the brownfield grants and loans have been announced. For Canos, we're continuing assistance on that project. Lansdale is undergoing additional review by the DNR. Facade work is up next. As you can see, some of the front, if you haven't been down there, some of the front has been torn off. They're still on track for a fall opening. I kind of use the term fall mostly, or begin fall. So I'm thinking more towards December fall. But I'll keep you posted as Mark knows the more of the status. Food truck development, there's still discussion of advancing the food truck park as a destination entertainment venue in the downtown. And then we're still recruiting new developers and investment within downtown. Contacts were held with and meetings with 4 developers on priority sites, including the Enor sign site as well as the Northern Hotel site recently. Sailor Photography is located within Downtown Delights, and so a business retention visit was occurred there, as they're gonna have a studio. I don't know if you've been in Downtown Delights, but Sailor Photography is kind of like right when you walk in, and then the ice cream store is off to your right. And then the Purdom building and the PNC Bank building, both properties have been listed for sale and are available for redevelopment.
Christina, can I ask a question?
Yes.
So now that the brownfield grant has been given, what is the timeline for them to start doing anything with that?
I don't think, and Ed probably knows the official timeline, but I don't think it's been set when they're starting.
We're having a kickoff meeting next week with Eagle and the brownfield consultants, and it's gonna be a pretty involved process. There's timing and staging and stuff, but I think Little River Holdings would like to see the building done by, they'd like to see it done by the end of the year. I don't think that's realistic, but probably they'll definitely be done by, spring.
Okay.
That's kind of what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think this is an appropriate place as any. I was just wondering how progress is coming with the Sleigh Bell Committee. You know?
Yes. It's interesting. It's definitely a learning curve this year. We're getting there. Julia has really, she's a go-getter, and she's taken charge, and so we do have one chair that would like to cancel the event, and so we are trying to do it to move forward. I think we can logically do a parade and a tree lighting. We did a tree lighting last year. I know Jeff's crew worked during that time to get that taken care of, and so we're still moving forward, and there have been some events. We've got the website up to date except for parade application, but you can submit an event. We've been getting some events being submitted by other organizations, which then as a whole you know, can make it possible. Like we have one person that's really doesn't want it to be a flop. And so, feeling like if other things aren't happening, why do it? But the parade and the tree lighting and the fireworks could all still happen downtown. Sponsorship definitely needs to get there. Right now, there's $7,500 committed, and typically that event for sponsorship is at $25,000. And so there is definitely work to be done, kind of.
And I'm gonna follow my story, I have not been to a meeting yet.
Well, that's not your fault, that's been,
Well, I
they've
just wanted to
been
say-
canceled.
They've been canceled, they've been sort of last minute, so.
Would it be appropriate if somebody from that board could report at next month's meeting, just to bring some more awareness and maybe we can help out more?
Yeah. I'm having lunch with the chairs today,
Okay,
so.
go ahead.
hopefully-
I've sat on that committee for 8 years now,
Okay.
9 years, and it doesn't feel like, it feels like we're about at the normal place in the planning.
Okay.
There's new people that are kind of getting up to speed, and usually the parade entries, sponsorships, that comes together more towards the end, it just always does. And I think people are a little bit more hesitant, just because we're coming out of the shutdown last year. But I think it's a good position,
Okay.
Good to know.
from my perspective.
No, I appreciate that. You know, there aren't very many events that the DDA, really, I mean, there's sleigh bell and pops and pops, and there's sort of a disconnect, and I think it would be helpful, just from an awareness standpoint, and how we can help out if there was some of the regular report, and you might see more participants too. So, if somebody was willing to do that.
And I think it's just, being that it's now coming, where the DDA actually can collect the documents and maintain the records.
Yeah.
I think that will be helpful moving forward. So it's just like anything else. You have to take the steps, and then maybe you learn as you go. So I'm calling it this
Okay.
learn as you go year.
Thanks, Christina, thanks, Joe. Is that it?
That's all.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to old business, city services agreement.
I didn't know if you guys wanted to discuss that any further.
Anybody have any further discussion on that? Okay. Moving on to new business, consumers energy grant application. Anything else on that, Christina?
And by the way, Carla, yes, it does say commercial buildings, so if we wanted to change that for residential, we would probably have to just add that into our next, if we made it to the next step.
I got you.
We would have to check on that.
Okay.
Unless someone-
Any questions for Christina on the consumers energy grant application? Okay. Item 9B, downtown bathroom service cleaning. Kind of, I think gets overlooked, and we did get a letter from a concerned tourist. I won't read it. You guys can read it. I think it's in the board packet. Jeff, do you have a copy of that?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments in regards to that?
I guess I'm just curious, I mean, Jeff, how often, can you talk about how often those bathrooms are cleaned downtown, or what the process is, just so the board understands?
Generally from May through September, they're cleaned daily. Usually, I think Mickey has summer staff that goes through and cleans all 13 public restroom facilities. And then on the weekends, in that time frame, we have one of the full-time employees come in on Saturday and on Sunday to clean and restock. And then I think it goes down to about 3 times a week in the off-season, except when we have holidays or events, then they're cleaned daily.
Are those still regularly locked and unlocked?
Although they are electronically
Oh,
locked every night
Okay.
and unlocked every morning.
What time, do you know?
The bathrooms vary. I don't know exactly. And just as an example, like the fish cleaning station, that has to be unlocked by 4 because the fishermen are down there. These are probably more like 7. I think it's like a 11 PM to 7 AM they're locked.
And I know there was an issue down there earlier in the summer that, the police departments, they're doing the video, they haven't gotten to where they think, but, you know, you can't have cameras inside, you don't necessarily know, that might give them an idea of what's
Yeah.
happening out.
That's just one incident. We have vandalism every week, every week. We're buying soap dispensers 50 at a time for the public restrooms, just as an example.
So I don't know how you address that particular thing, may have been bad timing, might have been, I don't know if he was talking about the general condition or the condition that day, or, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, Jeff, have you had any other complaints, or, you know, if something is trash, it's, you know, if they were clean, somebody came in, made a mess, somebody's gonna let you know, or if somebody stumbles across that, typically that word gets back. And then-
Yeah, I mean, we obviously, they get cleaned usually in the morning timeframe. And then if something happens during the day, somebody who uses those restaurants will tell somebody in the store, and they will call, and we will then respond. We don't go back and patrol them, but the public is very, alerts us immediately when things have happened, so.
Okay.
The only other thing on that is I have received a couple of comments from restaurants that the toilet paper's been out regularly. I'm not sure if that's just a once a week stocking, Jeff, just so you know that.
It's a daily thing, but people steal.
I assumed that is what it was, but.
And it's an uncomfortable topic, but there's a pretty substantial homeless population, and they will take anything they can get. They know when it locks, they know if it's gonna be a cold night, they know to get in before the electronic locks lock, and then you can still get out. You know, they're made so you can get out of them, but nobody can come back in, and so you end up with a pretty protected little place during the night. And a lot of times they'll take the toilet paper, build a pile, set it on fire. I mean, the vandalism's terrible, just terrible.
Thank you, Jeff. Moving on to facade grant applications.
Okay, well, I sent you everything. I sent you the book of how the facade grant looks online. And then I did include in your packet this morning 2 potential ways. I wasn't sure, the chamber being new to taking this over, I've only been included in one design committee meeting, which Kyle, you've been. I wasn't sure how the scoring happened, so I didn't know if we might want to assign a point value to the questions, the yes and no questions that are provided for the criteria online for the applicants, or how we want to proceed moving forward. So I did one questionnaire with points and one without, which is, I thought paper, at least you could look at them, and then we would have to determine how we would like to score the 4 that we have in. The Vogue Theater, actually the work is completed, but the design committee did table the request. They approved the Corcanos, but tabled the vote, so that's how that one is coming into this grant cycle. And so our current budget allows for $10,000 for this year in facade grants.
Okay. So we have 4 property applicants.
Correct.
Are we looking to approve these today?
That is a board decision.
Okay. It's been a long time since I've done this, and I might, Mary, you mind? Wait, I don't remember how we did this in the past, to be honest with you. Do you recall?
I can't say it's ever been done the same any cycle. Given all the changes, I think you're really adopting your procedure going forward.
Okay. What's this total dollar figure? I think I got it up.
No, I did not do that. I believe the vote will be less than that. I've asked for an invoice, but I did not receive it yet. So,
Just less than 10.
Thanks, Jim. Well, how does the board want to, there's $10,000 budgeted for the year. There's 4 applications?
They all have historic district approval.
Okay.
Christina, does the work have to be completed before the DDA writes the check? It's a reimbursement basis?
It is. And it's 50% of the project.
Well, does anybody have any opinions or thoughts on these projects specifically?
I just have questions on a few of them. It says the name of the business and the type of business. I think for 3 of them is to be announced. And I don't know if that's normal, but I'm curious as to what those businesses would do for approving funding.
Well, we're approving funding for a facade, for a building,
Okay.
not necessarily a business.
Okay.
So I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it really doesn't have anything to do with what goes inside of the
Okay.
property. The only one, and I don't remember tabling the lower one, I thought we decided not to approve it, but I could be wrong. That's the only one that I question is, to me, that's more of a maintenance issue, and flat work is, I guess, could be considered facade, but it's not all that impactful in my mind. So I'll be the bad guy to start out the conversation. The other ones I think are very appropriate.
I don't think what you're saying is exactly that. I mean, that's how I felt when I saw the vote. I would agree with you on that. Plus, I figured that they probably had a board of directors that they could do some fundraising for if they needed to pay for it, really, right? To cover the cost of it.
What are you thinking, Bruce?
I don't know what the definition of facade is. I was surprised that it wasn't the side of the building. Under the definition they were working to, it was the tile work in front. I was just surprised and ignorant. I don't know whether that should be facade or not. I think that there are, if you line up all of the needs downtown, I prioritize the sides of buildings, the cornice work, all that stuff that traditionally associated with facades. And I agree that they're able to raise funds.
The problem might be yourself, you said that those were tabled, and never got approval. But ineligible improvements, number one, improvements made prior to grant approval. So, like it's ineligible. If that's the guidelines we're following.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'm gonna make a statement. I think that there ought to be a subcommittee or something that figures out the process to go through and actually score it. I mean, right now, we only have 3 applicants, which is less than the budget amount. I don't think anybody would argue that those are probably the 3 highest priority downtown projects. So I'm okay with approving this today, but I'd like to see this process tightened up and just a formal process to go through. Especially if you get more than you have money available for, then you're gonna have to do something.
Yeah.
And if we get lucky, and we'll need a similar process for the rear
Absolutely.
building facade process. So we should think about those two.
And the facade grant as a whole, the application all needs to be revamped. It's got Denise Blakeslee still in there, and she's been retired for how long now?
Wow.
Yeah, so it definitely has to be looked at, so that was on the priority list for the year. Would be happy to have help.
Are you asking for a motion to approve the applications with the exception of?
Well, I can't really ask, I guess I can ask. I think that's what I'm hearing, some support for that.
I'll make that motion.
Would be specific?
That we disapprove the vote application, approve the other 3.
So, grant applications 2, 3, and 4.
It's $7,506 for those 3.
that specific enough, Kelly?
No, I would add exactly what Ed was talking about with some tightening up, because these ones have been there for, there should be some, I think, stated timelines.
Well, I think there is a timeline based on the court order.
Oh, I didn't know about
Yeah,
it.
these have to get done. So
Okay.
I think it's important that if we want to see those get done, that we approve this funding, that'll help those to get done.
Yeah.
So we have a motion on the floor.
Does the motion have to have the specifics of the address of it all in
I think because they're in the agenda, I think we're okay.
Okay.
Is that all right, Kelly?
Yeah, I wrote application 2, 3, and 4,
Okay.
so specifically those three.
Okay.
Just, I want to make sure
Yeah.
that you and I communicate.
Is
And
there-
we can hand it if we.
Is there support for Bruce's motion?
I'll support. I'll second it.
Thanks, Judy.
Yep.
And so Tamara made her comments. Anything else from anybody else?
In the, just so you know, in the application, it said the work must start within a 3-month period from the grant being approved.
Must
And it
start.
Must start, and it must be done in a 12-month period from that time.
Okay.
So that helps everybody.
Yeah. Anyone else?
I'm just clarifying, the vogue isn't on there because, as Ed mentioned, it's ineligible?
Ineligible.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
And this is not, this motion is addressing these applications, not the need to, to develop a process to revamp the evaluations.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's consensus for that as well. Okay. Anything else? Hearing none? Do we need a roll call for this?
We can definitely do it.
For spending money? Could it be official? All right.
Great. Kelly Creevy. Amy Jacobson.
Yes.
Jody Walter.
Yes.
Bruce Allen.
Yes.
Kyle Moser.
Yes.
Tamara Tomonio.
Yes.
Ed Bradford.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thanks, Kelly. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, applicants. Item D, bond priorities, MSU study projects.
We discussed at the work session kind of about contacting MSU to potentially get like streetscape architects. I didn't know if that was something we didn't do any voting or anything. And then also we were looking at reviewing the bump outs that were in here, if that was something the board wanted to look at, or if we wanted to look at something like that. So that's why I sent you all both MSU, the full study, as well as the presentations. That's as far as I.
Can I ask a question, please? So it's going to help me, I think, sort of understand exactly what is in the best interest of the community. If we had some sort of dollar amount or some sort of study, this is what we're looking at for downtown, and this is what we're looking at for the Riverwalk. Is that a next step, or where do we?
With the bond, we have to have dollars attached to the projects that we select before we apply.
So is that like a communication with, I don't know,
I think
Spicer
it's,
Group or some sort of landscape design company?
I think it's all of the above. So
Okay.
we have to know what the rough costs are for these projects so that we can, one, size the bond, but two, know what we can afford, I mean, which we clearly can't. But, so if there's competing interest between River Street, Division Street, and Riverwalk, we've got to know kind of what the scope of those projects are and what they're going to cost, because maybe doing River Street just itself is 1.5 million.
Sure.
Or LED lighting or Wi-Fi or whatever it is when it's downtown. So I think you need to, the board needs to look at the study, maybe have some community engagement. I would recommend that because this is a big deal for the downtown and the community. And we've gotten a lot of input through them, but maybe get more. And then this board, I think, needs to come up with what its priorities would be with not knowing the cost, but kind of, if we could do it, this is what it was, and then figure out a way to put a cost to that. So for the Riverwalk, the city's gonna engage Spicer to do a study of it and give us estimates on, prioritizing costs and stuff. So we'll have that. We don't know how long that's gonna take to do the job, but we'll discuss that, and that's, you know, what the priority list, so we can coincide with the bond. The switchback that Jeff talked about, if that requires total reconstruction, that's a big item, you know, it's $100,000 at least, not more. So I think we have to be able to prioritize based on the resources we have in the community, but then engage people to put a cost to that, then narrow it down, then you go up with the bond. So there's a number of steps here first we have to figure out. And I think, you know, we can't get a cost for everything we might want to do. We gotta narrow that down somehow through what's in the development plan, what's in the MSU study, what the board feels, I guess, is important. You know, I think some stuff's low hanging fruit. We talked about LED lights for years. If that's a low hanging fruit, then you put that on the list. Some of the things are maybe new that we talked about, so I don't think this is just a bad, I guess. And Jeff, in terms of streetscape architects, you were involved when we did the first one. Who was the architect for that, do you remember?
MC Smith and
MC.
Associates.
And they've done a lot of projects, but the city and DDA at the time were very dissatisfied with MC Smith architect. So there's other people out there that do that. I mean, Spicer probably knows a bunch, and Jeff, through his professional contact, probably knows people. So, you know, if we wanted to have the streetscape be a component of that, we're going to start compiling people that might be able to give us estimates on that. And that group might be different than who actually bids on it, but at least we can start compiling that, and then working on a parallel path to figure out what we think we might want. If we're talking about hiring a consultant to actually come and build on the MSU study, that's a little different issue. So there's just kind of different decision points, but I guess the board has to decide how they want to proceed. And, you know, it's not going to be a fast process, I think is the takeaway.
So if we were to hire an outside consultant, where does that fall in the budget? The DDA's budget? What line item would that be? Wonder.
Probably have to allocate funds, we don't have a
Well,
budget line in list.
In some of this, I have to check with the bond council, because it depends on the type of bond, but some of this might be reimbursable from bond proceeds. So you just have to cash flow it, but you've got a funding source to pay that back. And I can certainly get a closer check on that, or if that's a decision point now, I can get that answer as well. Or maybe a portion of them are reimbursable through the bond.
I like the idea of meeting, you know, maybe a smaller group or a subcommittee with staff, maybe meeting with a streetscape architect, just to kind of see if this is even something that we want to go down the road with. And, you know, maybe Jeff can help us with some contacts, maybe Spicer. I know of a couple, but I mean, would the board be agreeable to starting out with some conversations and bringing it back here? I'd be happy to be a part of that process.
So three, or, I guess I'm looking for direction.
I guess
How
what
would you
I'm
like
asking
staff
is,
to
I
do
guess
it?
I'm asking for permission from the board if we can form a small subcommittee to work on this.
Another suggestion that I would have is, you don't have to design the streetscape, you don't have to get into the fees of that. What I would recommend is finding a landscape architecture firm, somebody that specializes in it. And, I mean, there's gonna be some consulting fees that you should prepare for, but I think if you scope it out, if we did all new X, what does that cost? I don't think you have to design it at this point, but if you get your budget figures lined up, they will help you kind of think through what the priority levels are. Then when you sell the bond, you don't even have to use that firm necessarily, but then you can do a request for qualifications. You know, the design numbers should be built into your project numbers, and then you can really get into the nitty gritty of it.
Okay.
Because most of that expense there's a lot of meetings, and the meeting time eats up a lot of consulting fees. So, you know, early on, I would just find a firm that can give you some good direction and give you some good numbers.
Like cost per square foot on certain types of things and
Yeah, if
certain
I
features.
hate the brick pavers, we want to put a whatever in.
Yeah, okay,
You know, you can quantify, I mean, an engineer can do that, quantify that, and
yeah,
come up with some different styles. But the landscape architecture will help you mentally go through the process of what could happen and what could be done without going through the whole design charrette.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Is there guidance that the bond council has for the specificity required for for bonding?
You know, those don't have to be a line item detailed estimate, but the board has to be comfortable enough with the estimates that when they go ahead with it, they're gonna be able to complete the project, right?
Right.
Because the description in the bonding is written generically always so that it gives the board's flexibility, but there has to be some level of specificity. So
Right.
it's gonna say something, the bond itself is gonna say some level of, streetscape improvements, riverwalk improvements, lighting improvements, whatever it might be. And that's enough to do the bond, but for actual planning purposes, sizing the bond, understanding what the budget is, those have to be more detailed.
Because I think that approach sounds right to me, so long as it provides us the detail that we need for the.
He's gonna have to be able to render a judgment, bond council opinion that the projects that are being funded through this tax exempt bond meet all the IRS guidelines. So for example, streetscape improvements can't be so broad as to include facade improvements because those aren't allowable.
Right.
So to a degree, because some of the stuff that the DDA does is, the DDAs do sometimes, even though it might be statutorily allowed, isn't allowed to be financed tax exempt. There may be a little bit more specificity than a normal bond issue, like the bond we just did for a bunch of city improvements, but again, it's not this detailed itemized list. We're gonna need that for cost estimates and sizing, so there's two masters here, right? We gotta know how much it's gonna cost to a pretty high degree of accuracy. The bond council just needs to know enough to render an opinion.
So is it reasonable then to expect one consulting group to help us with both avenues?
No, I mean, our bond council, we'll work with the bond council directly to identify what the project is. I mean, streetscape things, clearly.
But one landscape architect would provide the data that satisfies both.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I misunderstood, absolutely. It might not for the Riverwalk, though, that's probably coming from Spicer and engineering group, but for this stuff, absolutely, that would work.
My biggest concern is I don't want to hold up the bond process, so whatever we do, especially with what we've got going on with the college, there's some expectations there, so if we can satisfy that the right way, and great, and then move forward.
The other thing is, I think we're one approach that feels right to me is that we're working with big pieces here, but the total for those big pieces is going to be far more than we could bond for. We need the public input to order them and size them, but we also have to have council input.
Yeah.
So designed into this process should be a point where we turn over to council and say, these are the big pieces, here's how much they cost. How does this fit into your priorities? What would you like us to do? Because, ultimately, we're a part of a bigger plan for development of the city.
And they have to sign off on the bond, so
And they-
you've got, the earlier you can involve them when it's appropriate, I think, the better, because what I've been seeing recently is some of these bigger projects are requiring a longer lead time for council to get comfortable with. So, but the other thing that might fit into this process, and I've heard a lot of people make comparisons to different communities, Traverse City, Grand Haven, Holland, we like this, we like that, we don't like this. I mean, maybe you put together a task force that actually visits those communities to look at it, what it looks like on the ground, and how has it held up over the last 10, 15 years, when was it installed, what do you like, what would you do differently? To me, I'm a visual person, that makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, Traverse City's had the bump outs on Front Street for a while. I don't know how they held up, I don't know what their DPW crew thinks about removing snow off of them. It might be good to get that actual tangible feedback rather than to say, oh, we think we might like this, when 4 other communities have tried it and said, no, we would do it differently. I think that, there's no sense of reinventing the wheel.
Right.
I think, and that might be really useful, even to schedule a few day trips to a couple of these communities to, meet with the people that maintain it, that meet with the business owners, and see what you get out of that. It might be useful.
We can go by vote.
You could.
I agree with your thoughts in the process there.
Kyle, if you want to not take too long going through and selecting a firm, Spicer does have landscape architects. You as a group may not choose them specifically to design everything, but certainly they're under retainer and contract with the city already, and I know can provide at least that level of detail to get you the dollar amounts and the scope for the bonding, if you wanted to explore that. I'm using their landscape architects to help me with, put together a grant application to do a beach master plan. We did one in 11, and it's been 10 years, and so I know I've been working with their staff, so I know that they would be available and could assist, and that could take multiple months out of that selection process. It's still not preclude you from hiring a firm that you choose later to actually design the stuff.
Maybe this is a dumb question, but with Spicer being the engineer of record for the city, does that reduce the cost for us to use them to recommend a landscape architect or something?
Yeah, our contract with them is built that way, that we get kind of preferred rates, but really it's the scope. It's the scope that you choose. When I was in the consulting world, I always drew a triangle for clients, and you have the dollars that you pay, you have the scope that you want them to do for you, and then you have the quality of the work. And the client gets to pick two of those, but the other one is a result of the first two. So if you want them to come to 10 public meetings and you want a really good job, the fees are going to be very high. You know, if you want the fees low, then you have to reduce the scope or you give up a little bit on the quality. So that's just kind of the equation, the way it works.
Makes sense.
But obviously they've been fair on their fees because we haven't had any issues.
Appreciate that.
You've got to map that front end process of, I think, as we discussed at the work session, that's all the pre-work, and then you get into the timing that you got from the financial guys at the bond council, and you match those up, and it's a fairly long process. And I think that's 9 months minimum.
Okay.
If you started today, so.
Let's start today. Ed's shaking his head, yeah. Keep going. Everybody comfortable with the process and moving forward?
So we're agreeing that Jeff is gonna reach out to Spicer and their landscape architect and maybe put some numbers together for us to look at for some sort of streetscape on River Street.
If we're going to do that, I would suggest that 2 or 3 of the DDA board make a little subcommittee, and we can have a meeting with them, and they can kind of suggest a process for you that would get you there, and then they can put some dollars to that, and then you can bring it back at your next meeting to see if you would like to move forward in that direction.
That was kind of the direction I was looking for, was consensus for a smaller group to meet and start that process.
Does that require a motion at all, or are we just gonna agree?
I don't think it requires a motion. Who wants to be involved in the process? Okay. Bruce?
Yeah, and you have the authority to form subcommittees.
I do. I guess we just formed a subcommittee.
So I'll just, and you're on that?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll work with you and set up a meeting time where we can sit with them and just discuss the concept, and they can walk us through it then.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Beth. We are to item E. We put globes on there. I feel like we talked about globes already. So,
Yep.
okay. Public comment.
Okay,
Please.
I've had the, my name's
Wait.
Ken Armour.
Okay,
Sorry, I've owned the iron works for a couple of years now. obviously you guys have probably seen some of the movement we've done with the city special use permit. I don't know how this works, it seems to be quite a hot topic, but I live in Grand Rapids and I've been up here in Manistee for 15 years. I have positions, I'm co-owner of Shipwash Marina. Anyway, I'm very familiar with the city. Some of the things I'm working on with the Ironworks, and I've been working with the city council and some other people, this seems to be a very hot topic, and I don't understand, but I'd like to know more. I have a couple liquor licenses in Grand Rapids, and we work quite well with the DDA, and the DDA is very helpful there. So I think you see where I'm segueing into. What are I'd like some feedback to see what your thoughts are of what obstacles I've run into. I've heard it from a couple other people of trying to get the Ironworks in the DDA. And one of the reasons, well, a couple of the reasons are we deeded, or I deeded, the city access for the Riverwalk to continue through the Ironworks. So now they have easements all the way past Ironworks. They have it past the end parcel, which Consumers owns now. So the city has access or easement legally all the way to the end of the peninsula, which they want to continue around. But my argument for the Ironworks is the railroad tracks, the DDA ends there. With the Riverwalk going through there, I think it's a direct connector to downtown, to the DDA. The DDA has things that I could use, that I use in Grand Rapids that I can't use now. River Street, heading north there, the city is very excited, and you can see by their comments that they want to continue the growth down River Street going that way. For the first building, you see Milwaukee House, obviously is a beautiful project that's going to be going. So the one tool I'd like to be obviously transparent would be, we have one in Grand Rapids, the DDA liquor license. There's nothing in escrow right now. I know the cafe, would love it. I've talked to quite a few family-friendly businesses that want in on the Ironworks building, and the liquor license is detrimental to a yes or no. The license we have, and I don't know if they're similar to what you guys have in Grand Rapids, they're kind of like, I would call family-friendly liquor license. You close by 10 p.m., things like that. They're not typical. But there are grants, other things available. I don't understand the politics of the city, the DDA. I've heard rumblings, I've talked to the city, but I guess I'd like some feedback on what you guys' thoughts are, if you think it's a possibility. If not, there's a lot of things, like I said, that I've done for the city, like easements there. Speaking of the sleigh bell thing, I let them stage their horses and everything else at the building every winter. I think we're really good, friendly to the city, and obviously the DDA and things of such, but I guess I'd like to know the inner workings, what the possibilities are without.
I have no idea what it takes to expand the DDA, and so it's probably something where a few of us should get together with city staff and at least understand what the process is and the thoughts.
Speaking of planning, he said, I was there yesterday, I've been up here for a couple of days, but he said, I think it's a good idea, Ken, to go to the meeting tomorrow, let them see your face, talk to them, because what I'm learning, and I don't know much about the politics of the city and the DDA, but they're saying the DDA, they were telling me, this is from the city, that they have a lot of influence with the city council. The city council has final say, yes or no, and the only thing I've heard is from people saying, we're not interested in giving up taxes to the DDA. Well,
yeah, there's, certainly upsides and downsides to both
right.
scenarios. So.
But as a business owner, it's very advantageous, as I've learned in Grand Rapids, to be in the DDA. And I think if the building wasn't where it's at, I wouldn't even be pursuing this. But where it's at, with the way the city wants to grow, you can see it in every Manistee, whatever the newspaper is, I get every day online. You can see their desire to continue the growth on North River Street. It's right at the line of the DDA, and there's a lot of incentives that I can get. And one of the tenants I was meeting with to come here was a really nice idea, family friendly, it was bowling and all that kind of stuff. And the liquor license is essential. I've been working with the MLCC, which I have liquor licenses. There's nothing available right now, so that would open up that. So that's kind of a
Okay.
high overview of what.
Well, I appreciate you coming to the meeting. It's nice to meet you, and I'm sure we'll talk again. But I will make some calls just so I understand the process better.
Cool, yeah.
And
If you got a card or something, I can just.
I can give you my contact.
Okay, and I'll send you my contact, and
Certainly.
obviously it's something I think has got to be done. Like you said, over coffee and figure out
Yeah.
what the process is.
But yeah, I appreciate you coming. Thank you. Anybody else? Barry?
I do have a comment, and this kind of ties back to your bonding. Just sitting through a couple of these meetings now, watching, I think you're embarking on a process that's going to be longer than you think it is. And I know that this building and the Riverwalk next to it is kind of a shorter time, or the desirability of a shorter timeline. I would just recommend that you start exploring or thinking about alternative financing for that piece, because I just don't see how these timelines are going to mesh in anything that's going to work well to get something happening there sooner.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question about what Barry just brought up? Could we use the fund balance for that and then use bonding to pay that back?
Possible. Depends on the timing, I think, 'cause, you can often reimburse engineering expenses, but not actual construction expenses prior to that, so.
It may kind of depend on our arrangement with the college too, what we're actually paying for.
So yeah, the devil's in the details. Generally, you can't reimburse yourself for construction expenses that have occurred prior to going through the first parts of that process.
Anyone else? Board member comments?
My only comment would be, Ken, to your comment about extending the DDA, is one of the potential issues there is the other taxing units have the ability to opt out. So we need to just fully understand that, if that's something that's gonna happen.
Kyle, does anybody want to work with staff on the facade grant process?
Anybody want to work with staff on the design process? You and Mark have already put their work into it, haven't you?
We on this one, but we can sort of finish up and put it on to the board. Is that what you're looking to do?
I'm good with that, unless anybody else wants to be involved in the process.
Okay. Just wanted to make
Thank
sure.
you. Make sure we're good. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thanks, Julie. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good rest of the week.